Hey, welcome back, everybody. I'm here with James Cadiz, and we have our Friday podcast. And listen, it's going to be rocking and it's going to be rolling. James, what's happening?
Lots of things are happening.
A lot of things are happening.
You're right.
Well, this is now what we're looking at. You and I were both on a conference call yesterday. It was a big one. A lot of people were on it. We were kind of in the state of California, strange things going on with churches. I don't want to get into that part because that applies to California and things that we got to deal with, not the rest of the world. But I read an article that said government tyranny is far more dangerous than this COVID-19 or the CCP virus. And then Dennis Prager said the other day, I don't know if you caught this, James, he said our dress rehearsal for a police state. And then he went out, that was Dennis Prager.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you look at that and you're thinking, okay, this isn't going Bible. This government tyranny article, it wasn't going Bible. And then we have this. Check this out, James. This is from Barr, Attorney General Barr. These are unprecedented, this is a quote, these are unprecedented burdens on civil liberties right now. You know, the idea that you have to stay in your house is disturbingly close to house arrest. That is the Attorney General of the United States.
Thank God.
Yeah, and so you're looking at this, and we hear what certain governors are doing in America, and then opposite of what we're hearing coming out of Washington and pushing against each other. Some counties are forcing all kinds of restrictions. The county I live in, James, in Southern California, is very restrictive. I can move over to Orange County, not so much. I don't know what it's like where you live. But let's talk about this issue of what Barr said, and this looks like house arrest, and our dress rehearsal for a police state, as a Prager said, Dennis Prager of all people.
Yeah, goodness gracious, Tom. Look, there's a lot to talk about here. First of all, I will never blame the United States government for choosing to make a decision to quarantine everybody, or what do they call it? Shelter in place, the whole country for, let's say, the first few weeks, okay? And here's the reason why I'm not going to blame them, although I'm not really happy about it. I'm not going to blame them because we didn't know what we were dealing with, okay? So if you don't know what you're dealing with, I think you have to take the necessary precaution. Do I think it's an overreaction? Yes. Do I think it's politically charged? Absolutely yes, okay? We don't have to go over many of the statistics that will actually prove that what I'm saying is true. We know this on the Hope for Our Times YouTube channel, which hopefully you guys are all subscribing to. You can go there and you can see many of the videos that have been done. I know on my Instagram, James Cadiz, you can go there, or the church's YouTube channel, Calvary Chapel Signal Hill. We talk about this. But here's the thing that's staggering. Here's the thing that really, really bothers me, right? We're past the age of being caution in the initial weeks, okay? Is it a decision I agree with? No. Did we go along with it? Sure. But here's the problem that we now have. Now, if you notice, they say, okay, well, we're going to shelter in place for 2 weeks. That's all we ask. 2 weeks, we're going to get the curve down, okay? Then they say the curve isn't down, so let's go another 2 weeks. Then we're going to get the curve down. And then once the curve is down, then we can start lifting these restrictions. Curve is down, curve is eliminated, for example, in the state of California. Really, there isn't much of a curve anymore. It's pretty much flattened, right? And mind you, their whole reason for wanting to flatten the curve, this is what they said from the very beginning, was to not overwhelm the hospital system, okay? Now, all over the country, as you know, with the exception of New York, New Jersey, they are furloughing nurses and doctors, okay? The hospital rooms are empty. There's no debating that, okay? But we take this a step further. Now they've transitioned from saying, well, we needed to flatten the curve, to now we want you to be safe, okay? We want you to be safe is translation for we're not fixing to change things. That's really what it's all about. So now it's going to have to get to the point where American citizens are going to have to ask themselves, what is really going on here? What is really going on? The leftists, the extreme left, are loving every minute of this. They're encouraging this. You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who gets up and basically encourages the whole world as it relates to our country to stop working. You don't have to work. We're going to pay you. Everything's going to be okay. Heck, don't even go back to work. Everything's going to be okay. Why? Because she carries the socialist communistic mindset that she's always carried in bringing us into this picture. And what they've been fighting to do since the bane of their existence, they finally got done in roughly 2 months. Now, the problem with that is just like the Attorney General had mentioned, this is becoming akin to house arrest. This is becoming akin to the deprival of all of our freedoms. This is becoming akin to the fact that we are now beginning to see what is the entry point to the disruption of our freedom to worship God, okay? Because that's the eyes that I'm looking at it through, right? I'm looking at it through those eyes. So if we do not start caring about this, and if we do not start standing up and writing letters to our mayors, writing letters to our representatives, writing letters to our governors, flooding the phone systems with call after call after call after call after call, if we don't get involved, we run a great risk of losing all of these freedoms. Let me explain to you here. With the COVID-19 deaths worldwide, we haven't even come close to the worldwide numbers of deaths from the flu. And everybody says, oh, well, it's just the flu. Well, just the flu, hundreds of thousands of people are dying because of just the flu. So what do we do about that? How about the fact that we were fighting, I want to say it was the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, I don't remember which one, I'd have to go back, when there was a smallpox outbreak, right? We're fighting a war when there's a smallpox outbreak that does far more damage than this. How about the fact that they've been lying about the numbers? They say that the COVID deaths that people are dying because of COVID are just, they're completely being inflated. Why? Because hospitals are being paid more when they report a death to be COVID. So a guy has a stroke and he drops dead of a complication that took place as a result of the stroke, any kind of a cardiac arrest or anything like that. Now they're going to write it down, COVID-19. Died because of COVID-19, with COVID-19. Maybe he couldn't get ambulance services fast enough. They'll say, oh, this is COVID-19's fault. It's a COVID death. So there's several variables we're beginning to realize. We're beginning to realize as we're testing more that there's a lot more people that have this virus than we thought, right? It's significantly more. They're thinking as high as 40% of the population has this virus. Okay, so just to give you an idea of what that could actually mean in the state of California alone, that could mean we could have as many as 18 to 20 million people that actually have this virus. I think you think about that. And if that's the case, then that means the deaths that we've seen in California give us a mortality rate, even if we were to look at it nationwide, even taking the high averages that exist within New York and New Jersey, we are probably beginning to skate around. Ready for this number? 0.012%. Literally not even 0.5%. It's a lower morbidity rate than many of the common flus that we talk about. Influenza A, B. This is getting stupid. It's getting ridiculous.
Yeah, and James, I think that's why people are really starting to get upset now, is because the real numbers are coming out on this. And so people are going, what are we really being locked down for? You know, why is the governor of California and some other governors, not just California, suddenly saying, oh yeah, well, you think it was bad before, it's going to be worse now. It reminds me of the kingdom of Judah, when after Solomon died, and then his son comes into power, and he says, he talks to his elders, and they say, hey, you know, this is how you need to handle the people. He goes, well, I don't want to hear from them. He went to his friends, and his friend said, you think it was bad under my dad's reign? Well, wait till you see how bad it's going to be now. Your taxes are going up. You're going to have scorpions for dinner now, or whatever it was. You know, you look at that, and it seems these governors and other people, they're heads of counties and medical departments, are saying it's just going to get worse, and we're going to prove it, even if the numbers aren't there to justify it. You know, I'm looking yesterday in Riverside County in California, is saying, oh yeah, well, we're going to extend. We were supposed to have this stay-at-home lifted, I think today or Saturday or something like that. It was supposed to be lifted, and now they're extending it for another month and a half. And then you heard the governor of California say, Oh yeah, well, Newport Beach opened. Oh, guess what? Well, all the beaches are closed now. Nobody can go to any beach. So it's things like this. People see the numbers. The real numbers are coming out. The doctors that had their video that was banned and then it was back on.
Yeah, Dr. Dan Erickson's video, right? Yeah.
Dr. Erickson, and I think, and his brother. And then, so the numbers are coming out, but you just come across with more and more of these laws. And then we hear of this. And this is why I'm so concerned that we have entered into or entering into this police state, especially when I look at the history of Nazi Germany and how Hitler began his rise. It didn't happen overnight. It began with good men not doing anything, not standing up and saying, wait a minute, time out, what is really going on here? But then you hear this coming out of New York, and Mark Levin pointed this out. Andrew Cuomo ordered nursing homes to take coronavirus patients, resulting in widespread death. So everybody has already been told that the coronavirus issue in a nursing home is going to bring disaster. So why would you take another patient from somewhere else and put him into nursing homes, knowing it's likely going to kill him? You know, you look at this, and people are reading these things. That's Mark Levin. So you hear about these things. What in the world is really going on? It almost seems like they're trying to eliminate certain parts of the population, and I don't know, you know, just.
And if you can find that interview with Mark Levine, yeah. I tell you what, it'll get your blood boiling, because Cuomo, actually, the way he writes this off, and he really was prior to this whole thing with all of him being in the media or whatever, he was pretty much known as a bottom feeder thug of a governor, and he still is. He hasn't changed. Not one lick of anything that he's doing has actually changed. This thing, literally half the deaths that you see in New York, almost half the deaths were believed to have been caused by that single decision. By him saying, hey, oh, you're an elderly person and you've got Corona-19 or COVID-19, you need to go right back to your nursing home. You want to know why? Because in his mind, they're elderly, so we really don't need to worry about them. They're beyond a certain age. They've lived a long life. They might as well die, right? That came straight from the pit of hell. And we know that. This is satanically inspired nonsense. His little brother, who is infected, him and his wife, infected, walking around the neighborhood on bikes, walking around, no mask, no anything, no big deal. You don't see the governor kicking and screaming about that. And when you go back to this thing that Gavin Newsom is doing, Gavin Newsom, I don't care what anybody says, he's being inspired in a very dark realm right now. That's exactly what he's doing. He's like, well, you're going to open up the beaches? Well, I'm going to close them all down. Well, you know what, Mr. Newsom? What's going to end up happening is the people of this state are going to revolt. And if you ask my opinion, I'm super glad that something like this is kind of happening right now, because there's going to come a point in time where they're going to remember that man and they're going to vote him out of office. And I sincerely hope that that's what happens, because he has been depriving the liberties of all Californians, and unfortunately of a lot of people around the country, because they're paying attention to everything that he's saying. And I'm a big fan of Donald Trump. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate many of the things that Donald Trump's been doing. But one of the things I don't appreciate is the fact that Donald Trump has been complimenting Gavin Newsom. I think that Donald Trump, that's going to come back, and I think he's going to eventually eat those words, because it isn't going to be long before he starts saying, come on, Gavin, get with it. Let's go. Let's make this thing happen. You know, and I'm a big fan of our president. I think our president is a very smart man. I think he's sharp. I think he's gifted. But look, we got to get to the point here where we start making some decisions where we say, look, let's be guided by the facts. We are depriving the United States of America. We are depriving our citizens of the liberty that's afforded to us in the Constitution. And it is going to get to a point where we're going to have to start challenging all of this stuff. And one of the things I'm very pleased with is the Department of Justice has already filed a ton of amicus briefs in lawsuits that involve this disagreement that's going on, not only with Gavin Newsom, but with other governors that are actually doing this.
Yeah. We have these things going on. And then in Washington, I know you saw this with this whole thing regarding the Mueller report.
Oh, yeah.
Coming out with Comey. And now we have, it appears Comey could be in trouble. You kind of wonder if he ever will be in trouble. But we have a country that is so divided. And what's happening now is, the way I see it, James, is um, this current CCP virus is being leveraged to enforce the restrictions that we have. So much so that, listen to this, I know you heard about it, and this came out of New York with de Blasio, and the Jewish the funeral the other day. You heard about that?
Oh,
Okay, so this is a quote from de Blasio, and I'm going to read two quotes: the de Blasio quote regarding the funeral, and then the de Blasio quotes. These are both from Twitter regarding what he said to the Muslim community. Complete opposite. So here he is. My message to the Jewish community and all communities is this simple: the time for warnings has passed. I have instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons or even arrest those who gather in large groups. This is about stopping this disease and saving lives, period. All right. So that's the one thing he says there. And then you have him saying this. So he's saying and then he says this to the Muslim community. To those, this is on his Twitter, you can find it, anybody can. To those celebrating, I know it's painful not to worship together at a mosque or to be with your family or friends, but your sacrifice is playing a critical role in fighting the disease and saving lives. To the Muslim New Yorkers beginning their celebrations tonight who need halal meals, we have them across our 400 plus grab and go meal sites and are bringing hundreds of thousands more to the 32 sites most frequented by our Muslim communities. So you're looking at this, what a radical contrast between the way he's treating the Jewish community and the way he's pandering to the Islamic community in New York. I mean, it seems that way to me.
Oh, it's not seems that way, it is. And we've always known this. We've always understood it. People that carry an anti-Semitic sentiment within their hearts, anybody that has any kind of anti-Semitic ideation at any level, we know is being inspired by the enemy. Satan inspires that type of thinking. And it makes even more sense that he would embrace perhaps what might be the single most evil, if we were going to call it religion, right? The single most evil religion that you can find on the face of the earth is that. And he's embracing it, and he's saying, it's okay. By the way, here's something to think about. Genius de Blasio. Let's just think about how brilliant this mayor is. This mayor is saying the money of the people of New York City is going to feed individuals who hold fast to the ideal that destroyed our World Trade Centers. Think about that for a minute. Think about that. It was the Jewish community that, on their blood, sweat, and tears, rebuilt New York City. It was a Jewish community that built New York City from the very beginning, right? I mean, think about how grossly anti-Semitic that man is. Why wouldn't he say, we're going to help all of you? Why wouldn't he say, we're going to help the Jews? We've got all kinds of kosher meals. Could you imagine what he would say if we've got kosher meals here waiting for you during Passover? Could you imagine what would be said? Instead, you're going to jail if you gather in your local synagogues. What a fool.
It's over. The time of gathering for you Jews is done. That's the way it reads.
Yes.
And you're looking at it, and that's why so many Jewish people are upset with what he said, because this is, listen, Hitler was what, 80 years ago, 90 years ago when he started his rise, and you're looking at it, and there's some eerily similar things that are taking place right now. Now, check this out, all right? This goes along with it. I don't know if this was inspired because of de Blasio, but this says, this article, fearing civil war, prominent New York rabbi suddenly urges American Jews to leave for Israel. Brooklyn, New York rabbi Chaim Yaakov Frankel, also known as I can't pronounce it, rabbi, issued an unequivocal order last week for Jews in the diaspora to leave their homes and immigrate to Israel before civil war breaks out in the United States. He has been active recently in years on social media, especially with his lectures on YouTube, which are usually on the subject of the coming of the Messiah. But while on a visit to the South American and French Jews who have moved to Florida, the rabbi was unusually specific about the urgent need to return to Israel and Aliyah now, leave while it's possible. Things will get worse. He doesn't say things might get worse. Things will get worse. And it will be difficult to move from one country to another. the rabbi said. Then the article went on from there. So you look at this, we're looking at the entire environment of, again, I think of Prager's words, our dress rehearsal for a police state.
Yep.
Then we're looking at we're looking at the world changing. You and I, we both travel. I love going to Israel. I'm going, next time I'm supposed to go, it's going to be a whole different world of just being able to leave our own countries. We know that. I was talking with somebody from Italy this morning, and they're trying to put together things. And I'm thinking, well, I think you might be jumping the gun on how easy this is going to be. And so we're looking at this. And this rabbi says, you won't even be able to travel. It's going to happen. This lockdown is coming, but he's looking specifically at the Jews. James, you and I both know that anti-Semitism is going to increase. And I've wondered for years, because the Bible tells us in the last days that God will call his people home to Israel, to the land of Israel, from the north, the south, the east, and the west.
That's right.
They've come from Russia. They've come from all over the world. And I remember talking to you about this price, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. What would ever cause the Jews to want to leave the United States? Because, life is good here. And now we're starting to see things change. They're obviously changing against Christians, the conference calls you and I have been involved in. But we're seeing this against the Jews too.
Yeah, and I mean, again, and when we talk about this years and years ago, we would say anti-Semitic sentiment is what is going to drive away the Jewish population, because the Jews still have something within them that Americans are losing, and that is a desire to live freely. You know how it goes. When they go and they commission their soldiers in the IDF at that very young age of 18 years old, they take them and they show them, they take them to Yad Vashem, they tell them about what Hitler did to them, to their people. They tell them the story of Esther. They tell them the story of different people who have tried to come across and destroy their nation. Then they take them up to Masada. They tell them the story of Masada and what happened over there. And they tell this to the soldiers, and they say it in a very powerful way. If you could hear it in Hebrew, it's very, very powerful. They basically say this. They say, we will no longer, ever, ever, ever allow Hitler to happen to us again, and we will no longer, ever have the Masada complex. And then what they do, they tell them the story of Samson. And they say, we're not doing Hitler, we're not doing Masada, we're doing Samson. If we have to, we're doing Samson. In other words, give me liberty or give me death. And we as Americans have forgot that. We have forgotten what that means, because we would rather be entertained. We would rather have our Netflix. We would rather sit on our couches. And I'll go as far as to say this. I even blame many of the Christian conservatives who are choosing to literally walk away from the fact that our liberties are being taken away from us. Romans 13 is one thing, right? But there's a point in time where Romans 13 literally does not apply. There are times where civil disobedience is absolutely necessary in order to shape and change the mindset of the governors and the leaders of this country. They must be held accountable. They must. And in situations like this, the reason why they're not being held accountable is because we have allowed fear to take control of us. We are literally capitulating to the emotion of fear, and that fear has driven us into a wall, and we are not willing to fight back. And I say, shame on any one of us that has a voice where we have any kind of influence when we're not speaking up and being aggressive and assertive about these issues. It's critically important. Why? Because our very liberty depends on it.
Yeah. James, I was talking with someone yesterday. They're a business person. They don't go to church, not a Christian. I consider them a friend and a business person here in the Valley. And we're talking about the current issues going on. And they asked me what I was going to do about it. They weren't referring to a pastor, but you have a voice for the business community. And I said, look, I'm dealing with this on the church end, because on the church end, I know what Hebrews tells us, to not forsake the assembling together, being together, and all the more as you see the day approaching. And the call from God is, as you see the last days, you better make sure that is when you do get together. Right. And there are some things that are developing in regards to the churches. And I said, look, what's happening in the business community, and I said, business people need to step up and do something. I said, I'm a pastor. I got to do what I got to do. But you guys, there's a lot more money involved. You guys need to stand up and really start to realize what in the world is going on. And a lot of them do. Elon Musk is saying we got to push back against this. And then what's he hear? He hears from other business people, Elon Musk needs to keep his mouth shut. And you're looking at this and going, okay.
Mark Cuban said that yesterday.
Mark Cuban, that's who it was. And I'm going, okay, so I'm looking at this going, this is unbelievable. And then we have this. I know you heard about it because of your Egyptian background. And this is regarding Minnesota, Minneapolis, Omar. Officials approve loudspeaker broadcast of Muslim call to prayer in U.S. neighborhood. You heard about that, didn't you?
This is the first time hearing about it, but I'm not surprised.
Okay. It's in her district, apparently.
Holy smokes.
So apparently, she has made sure that the loudspeaker goes out there since you can't gather to be able to worship and do your prayers to Allah. Could you imagine if it was some synagogue or a Christian church that was allowed to broadcast their prayers? That would be awesome. I mean, we have to get a permit, James, if we want to have an Easter sunrise service, a Resurrection Day sunrise service. If we want to hold it outside, we have to get a permit just to have music outside.
I would beg anybody who lives in her district right now that's a Christian, invest in a loud speaker system and start praying to the Lord, our God in heaven. Literally start doing exactly what they are doing. If they can scream, El Salatu Khairan min al-Nawm, Allahu Akbar, Muhammad Rasulullah, you can in your own language and in your own tongue say, Jesus Christ is Lord. And God, we pray against the powers of darkness. And I dare her to shut that down. I dare her to say anything like that because it would, we need to get involved, guys. Listen, for those of you that are listening to us, when things like that happen, you cannot lay down and allow that to continue to take place. Every single thing like that, because the hypocrisy is insane. How about Gavin Newsom? It's the same thing. In the state of California, we want to support American businesses, so we're going to pay American businesses to give us the supplies that we need. Yet, he just signed $1 billion contract, already wired the money to China to provide 5 million masks. 5 million. It's insane.
$1 billion contract.
$1 billion contract.
That is insane.
It's crazy.
I'm looking at all of this going, this whole thing is just nuts. Now, here's something else, because we know in the last days, you also have wars and rumors of wars, right? Well, there's a lot of things that are happening with China right now, and China is facing a firestorm, except from leftist politicians.
Right.
But we have this. Chinese military lashes out at American warships intrusion in South China Sea. I don't know if you heard about that at all.
I heard a little bit of it. I don't know the whole story.
Let me read. We've got about 2 minutes left. I'll read. I'll let you comment, then we'll close. The People's Liberation Army, a Southern Theater Command which oversees South China Sea, said the USS Berry destroyer intruded into waters around the Parcel Islands without permission on Tuesday, just the other day, prompting the command to scramble air and sea patrols to track, monitor, verify, identify, and expel. And then it went on to talk about the escalation of what is happening there. So you and I look at this, and I'm thinking, I'm looking at all these things that are taking place, and I'm concerned, James, I'm concerned that people who claim to be followers of Christ just don't want to hear any of these things.
Right, right. And the reason why I think they're doing this probably is related to North Korea, because they don't know, we really don't know completely what the outcome of the North Korean dictator is. He might be dead. We really don't know what's going on. But remember, they're taking advantage of the level of instability to do whatever purposes they want to accomplish in front of that. I gave you a great example of this. During this time, I'll let you in on a little secret. When I've been teaching or I do a Q&A session, mostly when I do a Q&A session, I bring my dog with me to church because nobody's there, right? So my dog is right by my side. You can't see him. He's off in the corner, right, while I'm teaching. And he's a smart little sucker because he knows I can't say sit or calm him down while I'm teaching. So he will get up and try to do whatever he wants to do when I start. And now he's got it down because I can look at him and go, hey, shut up or you're going to get yourself, smashed in the corner, right? But here's the thing. That's exactly what China is doing. China's doing the same thing. The guy's at the pulpit, he's talking, he can't do anything, there's distraction. Let's go get somebody else's attention. Let's go deal with what we need to do. That's what's going on with the situation that we're dealing with worldwide right now. It's the same thing.
Amen. Thank you, James. We are out of time. Listen, if you don't know the Lord Jesus Christ, now is a good time to ask him to forgive you of your sins. We're going to be back next week. James, I can't wait to talk to you again. And until then, bye, everybody.
God bless you.
You can say goodbye too.